Welcome back, I'm Kim Bailey and this is Floral Art Review, where we use our AI, DesignEye, to review and analyse an old competition piece of mine and give us some ideas about improvements for that design, as well as how it meets the principles and elements of design, which is how we are judged in competition. This is a design from probably 4 or 5 years ago now. The title was Spiralling Up. It was staged on the bench, and the space allowed was about 70 centimetres, I think. And you can see from the image that it was based on a timber slice from a banksia tree, and on that I've got a gourd that actually has a copper pipe inside it to keep it upright in that fashion. And then I have spiraled around some Guinea lily leaf and some calla lilies and some rope. And the rope is deconstructed from a full-size rope, because this was at the stage where we were beginning to be allowed to use material that was derived from plants, not just straight plant foliage and flowers. I was very happy with this design. I felt like it met the brief really well. There's probably a few things that looking at it now, that I would change, but I know that at the time it met all of the things that I wanted it to do when I was in the planning stage. The design got first place. It was a national competition. It was the first time that I had gained a first place in the national competition, and so I was quite excited to see the results. That said, there's always things that we can learn from our design, so let's see what DesignEye has got to say about this particular design. Looking at line, first of all, line is the dominant element in the design. The upward spiral created by the strong wrapped cord and the overlapping foliage is visually dynamic and gives the design its title. The line moves the eye naturally from the base to the tip, creating rhythm and flow. The vertical thrust also contributes to a feeling of energy and growth. What I really wanted with this design was to make it feel as though it had burst from the base and it was spiralling up in that growth pattern, rather than have a very static display. A lot of the others were beautiful designs, lots of flowers in them, but lots of flowers in a spiral shape moving upwards. And I really wanted this to be more about the excitement of spiralling up, just something that, almost like a spring that's burst out of its containment. Form now. The form is vertical and sculptural, following a clear linear pathway. The calla lilies contribute tubular elegance, contrasting the dense wrapped base and woody textures. The use of a single central axis gives the form cohesion. Now, this is interesting because when we are choosing our plant material, we have to think about how the plant material will help in determining the story of the design. So for this one, if you think about, had I used roses, I might have got away with, but I felt I needed something that had a softer stem so that I could incorporate the stem as well as the flower in the spiral, and that the flower itself would look like it was moving up as well. And so at this time of year when the competition was held, calla lilies were the only thing that I really felt helped the form in the design. Texture. There is effective contrast between the coarse texture of the rope, the rough organic base, the smooth glossy colours, and the firm green leaves. These textures enhance visual interest without overwhelming the main structural components. So, as you will know if you've looked at any of the other videos, texture is usually the thing that I want to focus on more than, and I naturally focus on more than anything else. But in this case, it needed to be line, because the title talks about a line. A spiral is a line in a design. And so I really needed to pull back on the textural contrast a little bit and make sure that the line was the dominant feature, which I have done in this case. Colour. The palette is natural and restrained, creams, greens and earth tones. The colours bring a gentle brightness, while the rough brown of the base and rope reinforces an organic, earthy grounding. I have to admit that I didn't think a lot about colour with this design. I really focused on the line, and I think that the colour of the lilies, when I was thinking about the form and these were the right sort of plant material to have, I knew that the green leaf of the Gymea lily, because of its size, would be dominant, and so I felt that I had to have that green fairly dominant in the other plant material, and so really I used what I could get. I could have worked it with tulips at the right time of year, but once again I would have to be very careful about another very solid colour competing with the dark green of the leaf that's there. Space. Positive and negative space is handled thoughtfully. Negative space between the spirals enhances the vertical movement and ensures the design doesn't feel too heavy. The open placement of floral materials adds airiness and grace. Now, this is one of the areas that I am concerned about when I look at this design, is that the bottom of it, to me, around the base, feels a bit cluttered and not enough space between the rope and the gourd so that you can see what is there. And at the top, I've lost the spiral a little bit. I've lost the space in that last little section. I would like that to have been a bit more of a matching spiral to go to the top of the design. Balance. This design is visually balanced with asymmetrical distribution. The spiral helps stabilise the visual weight as it curls upwards, and the leaf placements maintain equilibrium. So yes, it is balanced, but I think it would be even more balanced had that Gymea leaf come out a little bit further towards the top. I'm doing this to show you what I mean. Rhythm. There is clear rhythmic flow created by the spiral line and repeated use of colours placed at intervals. This rhythm is well maintained and helps draw the viewer's eye upward in a measured way. And that's exactly what I wanted. The rhythm needed to be set by the spiral of the Gymea leaf, and the plant material, the flowers, the additional plant material, had to follow that line so that the repetition would be rhythmic, and it would help you to keep moving along that line and reinforce that spiral feel. Contrast. There is textural and colour contrast, the rough and smooth, matte and shiny, soft and firm, which adds depth and richness to the design. There's probably, it's a little bit hard to tell in the image, but the Gymea leaf is quite shiny, and so that's my shiny, but there's a whole lot of matte surfaces, and so I probably would look at having something a little bit more shiny somewhere. I don't know where, maybe a little bit more at the base. I have to think about it. We'll see what the suggestions are. Dominance. The spiralling line is clearly dominant, with all other elements subordinate to its motion. The colours are subordinate and supportive, enhancing rather than competing with the structural spiral. So this is what I was talking about just before, is that the flowers themselves didn't need to compete. I knew that I had a very strong spiral line with the Gymea leaf, and I needed the rest of the design to support that line that was being created by that very dominant colour and form. Unity. All components work together harmoniously: natural forms, textures, colours, and the central spiral theme. Unity is strong, though perhaps could be pushed even further with subtle refinement of material handling. So we'll see what the suggestions are for that, because I know what I am concerned about, as I mentioned, about the base of it. So let's move on and see what the suggestions are. Number 1, sharpen the spiral edge. The spiral movement is strong, but finer adjustment of leaf angles or rope wrapping tension could create a crisper, cleaner visual sweep. Consider trimming or tightening loose ends of twine at the base to enhance polish. So yes, I think that that's a fair call. I think that I had an idea in my mind, and I looked back at my design notes before I started the video. I had an idea in my mind that I wanted it to appear rougher at the base so that it looked like it was forming itself as it started to coil and got tighter and tighter towards the top. But that's not clear in this design, and so having it a more refined and neat finish would help the design. I think that's very true. And as I mentioned, I think that top spiral just needs to come out a little bit more, so it is very much obviously part of the spiraling shape. Refine the base presentation. The base, while natural and grounding, looks visually heavy and slightly cluttered with the loose sprawling cord. Simplifying or anchoring the rope more deliberately may elevate the overall finish and give a clearer starting point to the upward spiral. And that's very true. And I look at it now and I think, I got too carried away in the interpretation and the artistic license that I was taking instead of making it a clean, neat design. So, lesson learned, that's definitely something that I would tidy up and consider for another design with a similar class title. Flower maturity consistency. If possible, use colours that are similarly mature or fresh to reinforce unity and maintain a consistent tone. A wilted or over-open bloom can detract from the upward vitality, and that's very true. And I think that's an interesting point to remember, is because we do get marked on the condition of our plant material. And so I needed to ensure that none of those, I think there is one that's a little bit more wilted than the others. I have to make sure that they are all in exactly the same condition that's going to help with that spiral. Sometimes you can get away with buds and half open and fully open in different types of designs, but for this one where I was relying on that form to form part of the interpretation of the title, I really need to focus on making sure that they are all very much the same, in the same condition. So as an overall summary, spiralling up is a thoughtful and well executed vertical design that strongly embraces movement, rhythm and unity. The excellent use of line and textural contrasts. A few refinements to the base, composition and material polishing would elevate it from accomplished to outstanding. So once again, there's always things we can do that might just lift us a little bit higher in the rankings, a little bit higher in the overall standings, and just helps us on our journey in floral art. Every little bit of education helps us in our journey, and I encourage you to upload your own images and have them analysed so that you can see what you might consider next time you put a design together. I will leave it there for this week. I'm Kim Bailey, and this is Floral Art Review.